Hello, everyone, and welcome to a long overdue edition of the eMLB Insider Podcast. My name is AnjouPays. I'm back with JR of the Cincinnati Reds. How are you doing, JR?
Pretty good, Andrew. How you doing tonight?
Doing well. As of this recording, we are 1 week away from opening day of the real life MLB, and I couldn't be more excited. I am ready for some baseball, especially since today was supposed to be the regular opening day before the delay. So I'm really itching to get back into some baseball. But for now, we've got eMLB to keep us happy until then. Apologies for missing a week's podcast. Both of us had scheduling conflicts where one person was busy while the other person wasn't, and we couldn't quite coordinate that together to get a podcast episode up last week. So we do apologize for that. As a result, this week we are going to do something a little bit different. Previous podcast, we had highlighted our players of the sim and our best and worst teams of the sim, but because it has been basically a month's worth of games since our last podcast, we decided that that would just take too long to discuss, and we are going to focus on news stories that has happened since our last podcast, and then we're going to do our updated power rankings with a clean slate. We're not going to talk about who's moved up and who's moved down because there's been a lot of changes since our last power rankings. And spoiler alert, no, I don't have my Cardinals at number one anymore. But we'll get into the details there later. But yeah, once again, apologies for missing last week. We know you. We've been hearing that you guys have been enjoying the podcast, which makes us feel great that we're actually doing something right. And so we felt bad that we couldn't get one to you guys last week, especially during Commish's partnership celebration. But hopefully we'll get back into it, get a more consistent schedule going. I mean, you guys understand real life sometimes gets in the way. We also, I do have a couple people that have been interested in doing interviews, and I apologize I haven't done those yet. So we will get to those eventually as well. It's been a little bit crazy, especially for Mr. JR here, who works for a major league team with the start of the season about to come forward. But without further ado, let us get into the recap of what has happened since our last podcast, which has been a lot. We are now in late June, getting close to the All-Star break. All-Star voting is open, and we might have to do a special All-Star edition of this podcast at some point, but that is not tonight. But let us take a look at the standings as I switch my screen here. Standings across the league right now as we sit at the 23rd of June. Boston is in front of Tampa Bay in the AL East by just a half a game. Detroit is up 5.5 games on the Chicago White Sox in the AL Central. Texas has opened up a 6-game lead over the Angels in the AL West. The Nationals are fighting with the Phillies and Mets all within 2 games of each other in the NL East. The Brewers have stormed back to come within 1.5 of the Cardinals, while the Cubs are also not too far behind at 4.5. And then the Padres are surging ahead in the NL West with an 11.5 game lead over the second place Rockies. So, JR, as we are here in late June, what are some things that stick out to you, either compared to the last time we talked or as a season overall? Like, is there someone at this point of the season you're surprised to see them there?
Yeah, I think early on we talked a lot about how a team like Boston, a team like San Diego was off to a great start. And I think both of us wondered what kind of staying power those two teams would have. The AL East, obviously, the Tampa Bay Rays have been kind of the kings there. And then in the NL West, the Diamondbacks have really ruled that division. So I think we both kind of wondered if at a certain point Boston and San Diego would come back to earth. And instead, I think they've excelled even more in this last month or two of play. San Diego, to your point, is really running away with the West at this point, and we're well past a third of the way through the season. As you said, we're coming up on the All-Star break, so we're no longer at a point where these teams are off to good starts. They're in contention. Even a team like the Phillies in the NL East, they're just a game back from Washington. Even though they lost Manny Machado before the season, and they started off strong, and again kind of wondered how much they would be able to compete with Washington and Atlanta in that division. And that division has been jam packed. But I've also been impressed really with Tampa Bay kind of making their comeback. They have been on a real tear lately, kind of looking like the juggernaut. we all expected, and they've got even more help coming on the way. Doc Luger, big time starting pitching prospect, is about to make his debut. So is Ham Porter behind the plate. So it's some of those top prospects they've got are ready to infuse a little bit of a boost there as well. So
That's actually an interesting. That's actually an interesting topic though, because the Rays, you see them, they're sitting at 41-27. They actually have one of the top 5 records in the league, not just their division. Like only was it 5 teams have over 40 wins, and they're one of them. Why choose?
And the top
Why?
run differential as well.
That's true. So that actually makes my next question even more pertinent. Why choose now to have some of your top prospects make their debut? Why not stick with what's working and try to keep that momentum going?
It's hard to say. I mean, I know we'll get to trades where they picked up Tyler Stevenson behind the plate. So I know Charles wasn't real happy with the guys that Charles Williams, GM of the Rays, wasn't real happy with what his catchers were putting up. And he's the type of GM who's not afraid to throw some young players out there and let them go ahead and start performing. He's brought up top prospects in the past and thrown them into the fire. And, he's always willing to make a change if he feels like it's warranted. And, even if things are going well, he'll throw a guy out there if he thinks it can make his team even better. So it's kind of like the mad genius there in Tampa. I'm in a position where I'll trust his judgment at this point until proven otherwise.
Yeah, although you have to think he's worried about his catching position, so you have to wonder if he's regretting the Keibert Ruiz trade at the in the offseason.
I think so. I mean, again, anytime you give up a player of that caliber at a premium position at like catcher, you're likely to regret moving him at a certain point.
It's not like he got a bad return for it. Like he got adequate compensation for
right.
Ruiz, but you have to wonder now. It's like, oh no, I don't know if I had the depth to cover his absence, as noted by the Stevenson trade, and then now bringing up Hambino up as a potential starting catcher as well. One thing that stuck out to me is you mentioned the Red Sox. They kind of have a little bit of a roller coaster season. They started out strong, then kind of fade a little bit, and now they're coming back strong again. Another team on a roller coaster right now are the Baltimore Orioles in that same division. They started out low, got really hot, and now have kind of cooled off again. So they're kind of like Boston and the Orioles are kind of going like up and down with each other. Like one team's hot, the other one's not, and keep trading back and forth. I think that's kind of interesting. And I do have to point out both. Well, it's more my team, my Cardinals. Our offense has crapped the bed, and like I know I've talked about this in our Discord, but like we're going stretches where we're not scoring more than 3 runs in a game, like multiple series in a row. Like for example, this last series we played against Texas, who has one of the best records in the league. We scored a total of 4 runs across 3 games and lost all 3. And the Cardinals have gone pretty quickly from the top record in baseball to not the only division leader with a worse record is Washington. All the other division leaders have better records than the Cardinals now, and something's gotta get fixed because it's not their pitching this year. Last year it was their pitching. Now it's not their pitching. So let's just say I'm trying to fix the problem. I'm not going to go into more detail than that, but just leave that on the table.
But on the flip side, my Cincinnati Reds,
you guys are hot right now.
have been maybe the hottest team in eMLB over the last couple of weeks.
That's true.
We had an 8-game winning streak at one point that included a 4-game sweep in Atlanta. Guys, we're on a roll. Right now we've got the top scoring offense in the entire National League somehow.
Can I need some of that offense. Can you hand some over? Like I'll take Taylor Trammell off your hands.
It's funny. I've been trying to trade some of these guys all season long, and now they're winning. I feel like I can't break up the band until they go on a prolonged losing streak again.
Speaking of losing streaks that I find surprising, looking at teams at the bottom of their division, I think the biggest surprise right now are the Atlanta Braves, because we had talked to them about, like, going into the season, we talked about the NL East coming down to Nationals versus Braves, because Braves last year made the playoffs as a wild card team, defeated my Cardinals in the wild card game, and didn't really have a lot of major changes to their roster, and you figured they were just kind of reloading and get it going. They lose Max Fried as a starting rotation. Soroka hasn't been as dominant as he was in years past. Acuna isn't hitting as well as he usually does. They have the amazing rookie. Oh gosh, what's his name? Can't remember the rookie outfielder's name.
Antonio Alvarez.
Yes, Antonio Alvarez. Thank you. He's been doing amazing, but they're sitting at the bottom of their division, currently on a 7-game losing streak. That's a little bit surprising to see for me, because I expected them to be up there with Washington, but instead it's the Phillies and the Mets that are challenging Washington right now for the division lead.
Yeah, Ronald Acuna, he's been so for them. Christian Pash hasn't really given them much in center field.
Well, he's a defense first guy anyway.
Right. But you have a lot of guys that are kind of struggling with the bat, and I again I think it shows what kind of slim margin for error a lot of teams have when you have a tightly packed division like that. Miami has improved, obviously. The Mets have improved. Mm-hmm. We talked about the Phillies earlier. There's no easy outs in that division any longer.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
If you drop a pitcher like Max Fried and one of your other top pitchers takes a step back, all of a sudden that part of your team that was a huge advantage during their big contending years the last few years, all of a sudden that goes away. Now you really need somebody to step up, and they haven't had too many guys that have.
That's right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how the standings now reflect some potential trade deadline moves as we're getting into the month of July. We're also maybe seeing if any of these records can impact their draft strategies, as the first year player draft is coming up in a couple weeks. So we'll see how that goes. Having the draft around the trade deadline is really interesting, because sometimes you can move players that you think, okay, I'm just going to replace this position in the draft or that kind of thing, because you kind of have to think of both at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see how the standings right now affect trades, and we'll get into some. We got a few trade rumors that we're going to discuss later on the show, so we'll get into that in a minute. But the next thing we're going to talk about are some major injuries that happened, and we won't spend too much time on the injuries, because a couple of them have been already there for a while, so a lot of people already know about them. So let me switch over to my injuries, and now people are going to be watching me go through my OOTP as I changed how we're recording this. Watch me mess this up. All right, the first one. All right, go ahead.
I was going to say, they're going to see how adept you are at navigating OOTP.
Trying to do that while talking about it is probably going to be my weakness. But anyway, first injury we're going to talk about, we were just talking about them, the Miami Marlins. Jimmy Lewis is going to be out for a year with a torn labrum. He is one of the young pieces in that Marlins bullpen. I mean, if to be honest though, someone in the bullpen is a little bit easier to replace than someone maybe in your pitching rotation. But Jimmy Lewis has been pitching pretty well with a 3.86 ERA so far this season. Do you think this is going to be a big blow to Miami?
Anything like that hurts. I mean, he was a Rule 5 pick of theirs that they were really high on, and I think he's also the type of pitcher with his mix of pitches, and his ability to stretch out a little bit. We might have seen them give him some opportunities to start at a certain point this season as well, because they also suffered an injury to Madison Bumgarner, so who knows? Maybe he would have taken that spot in the rotation and been able to get some starts in and see if he could settle in there. So it's kind of a shame that they won't necessarily get to see that out of him. And again, with a shoulder injury, you just don't know really how a guy is going to bounce back from that. That's always a little bit more of a wild card than an elbow or something along those lines.
Yeah, he was someone that was picked up from Kansas City as the Rule 5 draft pick, as you mentioned, and he actually had the best strikeout numbers of his career so far. He was almost at 10 strikeouts per 9 innings at the time of his injury, so he was definitely performing better than he was in the past. So hopefully he can come back and start putting up those strikeout numbers again for Miami. But that's a a significant part of the bullpen piece, but one I don't think will have a huge impact on the Marlins moving forward.
Yeah.
Next one is a member of your team. Let's see if I have the news story for him. I don't think I have the news story for him. But Lyon Richardson is out for the year with a stretched elbow ligament.
Yeah, that was a really it's really been a disappointing year for Richardson for us. He originally kind of came through the system as a reliever. His changeup was a real weak pitch for him, so he spent a lot of time through the minors trying to refine that while working a lot as a late inning guy. He'd been a pretty about league average or so pitcher as a starter the last couple of seasons, and I was really heading into this season hoping he might have taken a step forward and really kind of established himself. And he started off very, very awful in the rotation. And I'd actually recently demoted him to the bullpen to try to get himself right there before the injury. So really, really a shame. He's got a great arm. So I hope he can bounce back from it. Hate to see him have to miss a good portion of this season and likely part of next season recovering.
Yeah, he definitely had. It's a significant step back. He's got a negative .6 WAR right now and over 8 ERA. So that move to the bullpen was probably warranted, and maybe this injury will help him reset and refocus. But he will be out for quite a while with that injury.
Yeah.
Next up, another pitcher. This time also in the NL Central, and once again, I'm trying to find these injuries. I don't think it's on the news one, so I'm just going to go straight to his page here. That is Chicago Cubs closer Craig Kimbrell. He's probably there. He is. He is on there. He's not going to be out for the whole year like some of these most of these other ones are, but he is out for a couple months with a strained hamstring. And this is one of the more dominant closers in the eMLB. Came over as a free agent after spending the last few seasons in Boston. Was out to a very strong start with a 2.93 ERA. And this might hurt the Cubs' chances of making, because right now they're sitting at 4.5 back of the Cardinals in the NL Central. I think this might have a pretty big impact on their potential to try to make a run at the division.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Cubs made some moves. We had talked earlier in the year about them bringing in Stanton, and they kind of brought in a couple of veterans to mix in with their younger guys, and Kimbrell was one of those. And he really had been able to lock down the back end of their bullpen. Was pitching pretty well, pitching better than he had the last couple of years in Boston. Really, it seemed like. They're going to probably have to scramble a little bit here while he's out. Hopefully, staying in contact and maybe being able to still make a dark horse playoff run if they can keep close there.
Yeah, and currently, based on what we see in terms of what let's just make it sound like it's what they have listed on their website as their depth chart. They don't have a listed closer. They have Ian Hamilton listed as a stopper and everyone else as a middle reliever or a specialist. So it's a closer by committee right now in Chicago, and you have to hope that it works out for them if they're going to make a run at the NL Central, or this may just be like, all right, we're using this as a development year for all of our young players. The Kimbrell thing didn't work out, but he won't be out for the rest of the season. He will be back a little bit after the trade deadline. And we'll see if he can if the Cubs are in a position to make that strike, and having him come back will be a big boost to them, or if by that point they're so far out of it that it won't really matter. So it depends on how these other relievers step up in his absence, or if they're in striking distance, maybe they make a trade for another reliever. So adding to the trade rumors here. Next up, we have another player who isn't going to be out for very long, but is definitely a player of interest, and that is Minnesota Twins right fielder Alex Kiriloff, who is out 6 weeks with fractured ribs. He has been having a little bit of a down year compared to the past couple of years, not hitting under 250, whereas the other seasons he was around 300. So a little bit less, but still having, in terms of his OPS plus, he's still having an above average season. 7 home runs, 23 RBIs. So at this point in the season, at this point after the Sims, he's out for 4 more weeks. Do you think this will have an impact on the Twins chasing the Tigers in the Central?
Yeah, it's a relatively short amount of time in a way, but it's also a blow, I think, really for the Twins because they're really kind of hanging on a little bit there, right above 500 and trying to stay in it, but their offense already was struggling, and they're in that bottom third of the AL in runs scored. So
Mm-hmm.
even though Kiriloff was a little bit below his average in terms of production, they really don't have anybody that's going to step in and give them what he's been providing them. So that's really going to be a tough one for them to weather and still try to stay in contention there, not only in the AL Central but in the wild card because the American League is so packed. I mean, they're going to need some of these guys like Laron Smith, who heading into the year, everyone in Minnesota was really expecting to have that big breakout season. They really need him to step up, a guy like that in Kiriloff's absence, to make up for it.
Well, I just pulled up on screen. I know you can't see it, but I pulled up Trevor Larnach, who was just recently called up from AAA, who has been playing consistently in right field for the Twins. In only 11 games, he's still hitting 333 with a 404 on base percentage. So if he can keep that up, they won't miss Kiriloff that much, and he might stick in the majors even after Kiriloff comes back and maybe send someone else down to the minors because that's an impressive performance. And he was killing the ball in AAA before coming up to the tune of a 1.4 WAR in only 52 games. So
Yeah.
if Larnett can keep that up, he might force his way into the lineup as a instead of some other players in Minnesota. So hopefully he can keep that up for the Twins and they won't miss Kiriloff that much. But like we said, he's going to be out for 4 more weeks. That is going to be after the All-Star break before he comes back. All right, we got 3 more major injuries, and this next one is a doozy. Milwaukee Brewers pitcher Walker Buehler is out for a year with a torn flexor tendon. This is a huge blow to Milwaukee, who have been chasing down my Cardinals for a while now. They've been playing well while my Cardinals have struggled. They're only was a game and a half back right now of the Central, but losing Walker for the season is really going to hurt. This is the ace of their staff right now, pitching one of the best seasons of his career so far. Its ERA is at his lowest. His walk rate is at his lowest. His K rate is almost at his career high. 1.4 WAR, not even halfway through the season. This is a huge blow, and he's going to be out for a year plus.
Yeah, you said it right. It's just a crushing blow for Jason Hellman's squad. I mean, Bueller just signed him last year to a 5-year extension, and was really starting to show that as paying off. And that's just a killer when that the Brewers have been playing so well, kind of catching up to you there at the top of the division, and to miss out on him, and again trying to replace a guy like that. Now they're going back to having I think Mike Clevenger in the rotation. Maybe we see young Gabe Hillman get some starts at some point. He came up to the major leagues here recently, so maybe we see him. But some of the other starters for them are really going to have to step it up because really their pitching staff, even with Walker Buehler, was struggling big time.
Absolutely.
So you take Walker Buehler away from that could get ugly.
It's kind of funny. It's pretty much the opposite of the IRL Milwaukee Brewers. The real life Milwaukee Brewers have one of the best pitching staffs in the MLB, but a very poor offense. In this case, they have one of the best offenses in the league, but a very poor pitching staff. As you can see, I've got up on the screen right now their pitching stats for the season. Now that they've lost Bueller, the starting pitcher with the best WAR so far this season is Javier Felix with 0. Everyone else in their starting rotation has a negative WAR right now. That's not going to get it done. And if someone doesn't step up, like you said, maybe Gabe Hillman gets some starts because he's pitched okay in relief. His defense hasn't helped him out because his FIP is way better than his ERA. But this pitching staff is not looking good. Clevenger is not having the bounce back season he was hoping for. He's got almost a 7.5 ERA.
Robbie Ray struggling.
Robbie Ray struggling, and that's someone you expect to do well. Actually, no, I missed one. Yoander Suarez, I missed him. He has a .8 WAR. That's their best best starting pitcher WAR. But that's not going to get it done. You got to have more players that are not in the negatives when it comes to WAR, because that's not going to keep you're going to put too much pressure. Your offense may be good, but you don't want to put too much pressure on them either.
No.
So. All right, and then once again, another injury with someone out for the year. New York Mets pitcher. Where are the Mets? Wow, I can't do alphabetical order. New York Mets pitcher J.B. Bukauskas is out for a year with a torn UCL. Was pitching fairly well, a little bit better than his numbers last year. His K rate is down, but his ERA is looking better. Maybe not the most significant injury in the world, but for his career, it might be one of those, like, can you bounce back and can you make an impact at the major league level once you come back?
Yeah, it's really more of a personal setback, I think. I mean, no disrespect to him at all, but there's a lot of similar relievers that the Mets can probably use there to replace him, but he could be in a position where he's just, out of work this offseason and trying to see where he can catch on once he gets healthy.
Yeah, and I was trying to pull up his stats again. He only played in 4 games total so far this season. He actually started the year in AAA and was just recently called back to the majors, and now he's out on the injured list. He pitched fairly well in AAA. Well, he pitched okay in AAA. But he wasn't someone that was having a significant impact on the team. So, like you mentioned, the team is probably not going to miss him too much. But for him personally, it's probably a huge setback, and he's going to have to fight to make it back to the major leagues. In fact, this is the last year of his deal too, so he's going to be injured during free agency, and you have to wonder if any team's even going to take a chance on him. He might not even get signed until maybe not even until next offseason. So. It's very unfortunate for Bukauskas. We hope he does make a good recovery, but unfortunately he's only 28. He's not yet 30. He might find his way onto a team, like a bargain deal kind of thing, like a prove it 1-year deal. But not looking good for Bukauskas right now. And then last but not least, this one is not a season-ending injury, but it is a significant one nonetheless. The high-power Colorado Rockies offense is going to be without Walker Smith for 5 to 6 weeks with hip pain. Not even like a specific diagnosis, just generic hip pain, which obviously is a big deal when you're swinging a bat. He has been having a breakout season here in 2025 with his first year at the big leagues. He posted a 5.4 WAR at AAA last year, so you knew he was going to make an impact this year. He was already at a 1.7 WAR, not even halfway through the season. He's batting .329. He's slugging .516, and he's got 6 home runs, 38 RBIs. We mentioned him earlier this year as a player of the month as well as a rookie of the month in the same month. So now, with as high-powered a Colorado offense is, maybe they don't miss his production too much because they have a lot of players that are performing as well, if not better, than Smith. But to derail a rookie season like this is a little disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, he was a top Rookie of the Year contender. I mean, he still will be a top Rookie of the Year contender with that injury. He'll have time to come back and still put up plenty of numbers. But it's funny, we had at the beginning of the season 2 rookies really showcasing themselves, one of them being Walker Smith and one being Jorge Barboza. Mm-hmm. Barboza, of course, went down with a real devastating season-ending injury, and now Walker Smith with a tough injury as well. Thankfully not season-ending injury, but both kind of got a little snake bit there. But hopefully Smith bounces back, gets back there, starts putting up those numbers, and Colorado is going to need it just to try to stay in some kind of contact with San Diego, as hot as they've been out there, and if they want to try to make a run at the wild card.
I mean, I'm going to say this. They may be 11.5 back, but at one point Milwaukee was 9 back, and look at them now. Just saying.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. But yeah, we definitely hope Walker Smith comes back. Like you said, he's not going to be out for the whole season, but it is a significant amount of time being out 5 to 6 weeks. And we hope that whatever is bothering his hip doesn't affect his swing when he comes back. So we'll see. So that is all of the injuries that we have in store. Now we have a long list of trades to go through that have happened. Some minor, some a little bit not minor. I don't think we would call one blockbuster yet. I think those a blockbuster trade was going to happen closer to the trade deadline as teams try to solidify themselves as playoff contenders while other teams start selling off pieces to build for the future. But we do have a bunch of trades that we do need to go through as I filter down the transactions. Our first one, where is it? We've got the Baltimore Orioles traded away minor league shortstop Jorge Rivas to the Indians in exchange for reliever Taylor Widner. So what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a small deal. Widener, I think, is a guy that can be a long reliever, can be a middle reliever, could also start. So definitely gives the Orioles, another arm that they can kind of play around with there with that pitching staff. Gives them some options there. Rivas, looks like a decent enough middle infield prospect, but he's still down in A ball, so a lot of time left to see what he'll turn out to be.
Yeah, like you said, not a real major deal, but Widner is not a bad reliever at all. He's definitely someone who can solidify. Maybe not. He's not going to be in that closer role, but he can give you some valuable innings. It's kind of like a swingman kind of role. He hasn't pitched as well with Baltimore as he did with Cleveland, but he hasn't played in as many games. So we'll see if Widner can make an impact for Baltimore. And for Cleveland, you just as someone like Widner, maybe you don't need him this year. You look for a prospect that maybe can make the major leagues at some point. So I don't think this is a bad trade either way. All right, you're gonna have to do some talking about this one. Cincinnati. We kind of mentioned this earlier as maybe a panic move by Tampa Bay, but Cincinnati sent catcher Tyler Stevenson to Tampa Bay in exchange for pitcher Victor Munoz. All right, Reds
Yeah,
GM.
and to and to give a little bit of an explanation, this actually was a deal initiated by me rather than Tampa Bay.
Oh,
Seeing that Munoz was on the block from them, I always kind of liked him as a pitcher. Had a good arm, who was more of a ground ball pitcher. Seemed like somebody that would be a good fit in my ballpark. Who we could work to develop his skills. So inquired there, and they landed on wanting to try to help out their catching core with Stevenson, who was somebody who for the Reds had been a quality performer for the last few years. Had started off this season a little slow, and frankly, somebody that I had been shopping to try to potentially move at some point this year with Forrest Hyder coming up and getting ready to be ready for the show as the backstop in Cincinnati. So not something that I was too surprised to move Stevenson in a deal.
From my perspective, I think that your team got the better end of the deal, and no offense to Tampa Bay, I think took a little bit of advantage of their scramble to find a catcher. Um, I think Munoz, he's made his major league debut, went 6 innings, had 4 strikeouts, and only allowed 1 run. It looks like. So that's a pretty good debut for Victor Munoz for your team. He did pitch once in Tampa Bay, did not pitch too well in that outing, but Stevenson is a solid catcher. But I think Victor Munoz has a higher ceiling, and so we'll see if he develops to that ceiling. But Stevenson does give Tampa Bay stability there at the catcher position after moving on from Ruiz. You would think that they might not have wanted to make this deal because they were trying to like get enough out of the catches they had before the Hambino was ready for the majors, and now they're seeing if he is ready at this point. So maybe it was a little bit of a scramble, maybe not, but he's actually hitting pretty well in Tampa Bay so far. 21 games, he's hitting over 300. So
Yeah,
he's doing pretty well for them over there.
yeah, he started off strong with Tampa. I know Charles is happy with how he's performed. So at this point, it's been a win-win for both of us.
Which again makes me wonder why he's bringing up all these prospects to take away playing time from players that are playing well. Just I wish that's the kind of interview question I wish I could ask him. Like, what are you thinking here? Like, why does this make sense to you? So, because it doesn't make sense to me right now. All right, little bit of Los Angeles to Los Angeles action. We've got Los Angeles Angels and the Los Angeles Dodgers trading. Charlie Dillard was sent over to the Dodgers, a center fielder, and the Angels received pitcher Asa Lacy. Two pretty decent prospects or young pitchers. Lacy did pitch in 2024. Charlie Dillard has yet to hit the major leagues, but he's knocking on the door at 23 years old. I think this trade makes sense for both sides. LA was looking, I'll say LA, that could mean either of them. The Angels were looking to improve their starting rotation, and the Dodgers are having a less than stellar performance this year, maybe looking to get some younger guys for the future in their outfield. I think this made sense for both sides. Now we'll see if Lacy can have the impact that the Angels are hoping for. He's not pitching horribly right now. Could be better, could be worse, but I'd say it's about average right now. So I think the deal made sense for both sides.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, the Angels were definitely looking for some help in their rotation after some guys had struggled. You know, Jim Silla being the prime culprit there, got bumped to the bullpen after some struggles. But so Tom was definitely looking to get a bump there, and you know, like you said, pretty equivalent prospects there. So it seemed to make the good sense for both sides.
Absolutely. So we'll see if Lacy can have that impact that Jim Silla wasn't having in the Angels, and we have to. It's one of those, like, it's only a matter of time before Dillard makes it to the majors for the Dodgers. Maybe we'll see him in like a September call up if the Dodgers are not in striking distance, because they're near the bottom of the division right now. So it's going to take a good winning streak to turn them around. So we might see Dillard have some action late this year and prepare him to maybe take over in center next year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. All right. Our favorite trading GM making his first appearance on this list, his first of many on this list. Cody, we love you. The Baltimore Orioles and the Pittsburgh Pirates swing a trade where the Baltimore Orioles sent pitcher Scott Vaughn to the Pirates for pitcher Blake Wyman. Another example of the Orioles trying to improve their bullpen. We talked about Widner earlier, and now they've got Blake Wyman going in. So you have to think Baltimore does not think they're out of this. They're making moves to shore up that bullpen, which they view it's obvious right now. They view this as a weak point. And Wyman is definitely a pitcher that is making an impact right now. He's already pitched in 6 games for Baltimore. He's only got a 3 ERA and a couple of saves to his name, making a pretty decent impact in that bullpen. And on Pittsburgh's side, with Scott Vaughn, you get one of those. It's kind of the same situation as the Orioles traded with Cleveland earlier. It's kind of like, hey, we'll take a flyer prospect. We'll see. We like his tools. We'll see if he develops into something that's better than what he's rated at now, and you get a decent reliever in return. It's pretty much a carbon copy trade of Baltimore did with Cleveland earlier.
Yeah, pretty basic trade for a team looking to get some help in their bullpen for a decent starter. I mean, so starting pitching prospect. He'll be at Double-A, and seeing if he can move up. And Wyman is definitely somebody that can help the Orioles out.
Absolutely. All right, next trade from the Pirates. A little bit of a bigger trade here. I gotta get all my details here because there's a lot of names on this list. So the Pirates sent Mike Kennedy to the Red Sox for prospects Luke Little, Jack Bowens, and Caleb Binder, all pitching prospects. Now, this was a little bit of a surprise because you would think Mike Kennedy is one of the staples in that Pittsburgh rotation, having a little bit of a down year this year, even more so than he was the year before, where he posted a little bit over a 5 ERA. But you still think that Kennedy had potential, and he was just looking to find himself again. Maybe this change of scenery does that for him, or do you think the Pirates might have given up on Kennedy too soon?
I actually think this is a great deal for the Pirates. I was really surprised they were able to get that much from Boston for him. And if you look at Kennedy's, numbers, not just from this year but last year, he had really done well earlier in his career, but he wasn't really all that impressive last season, and then this year again started off a little bit slow. So I really thought that he would have had to have proven himself a little bit more before a team was willing to really give up what Boston was. You take a look at the haul that they were able to get. Caleb Binder, really solid starting prospect. Jack Bowens is somebody now who's up as a closer in the back end of Pittsburgh's bullpen, but could be a guy that if he could develop a third pitch, could end up being someone that goes into a starting rotation with some really great stuff. So there's the potential there for them to really get a couple of gems out of this deal.
Yeah, especially looking at Bowens, he looks like he's going to be one of the best reliever prospects in the majors right now, according to his OSA ratings at a potential of 77, which is extremely good. And Caleb Binder is not a slouch as well. Very solid potential top of the rotation arm. Luke Little, kind of like a flyer prospect situation, but I mean, Binder and Bowens alone is a pretty great return for a pitcher like Kennedy, who's got potential but hasn't been pitching to it. And he's actually coming off of an injury right now for Boston, so he hasn't had much of a chance to show what he can do in Boston. So I think as of this moment, I would agree the Pirates have the better end of the deal here for Kennedy, but maybe Kennedy can finally find the potential that a lot of people have been expecting of Kennedy for a couple of years now. All right, this is another minor trade here. We've got Atlanta and Cleveland making a couple of role player swap. We've got left fielder Bart Borland going to Cleveland as a left outfielder prospect, and then the Braves receiving middle infielder Taylor Walls. Now, a little bit of discussion is that just a little insider. The Cardinals were in discussion of moving another middle infielder to the Braves, but the Braves felt that this deal was a better deal for them, so they declined the deal from the Cardinals. So Taylor Walls is now a middle infielder in Atlanta, which is probably one of their weak points, but he's not going to be someone that change, or what's the phrase I'm looking for? Changes the needle. What's it that change? It's not change the needle. It's
move the
needle. I'm losing it right now. Move the needle there in Atlanta. He's definitely a solid player, but he's not going to be like, oh my gosh, we got the answer to our problems kind of thing. He's kind of like average to slightly above average. He's hitting pretty well in Atlanta so far. He's batting almost 400 in 16 games. But you have to think, is that something he's going to keep going? Is it too little too late for the Braves sitting at the bottom of their division? It's not a bad deal because it's like, again, one of those like flyer prospects in Bart Borland to Cleveland, which also makes sense for Cleveland. Taylor Walls doesn't really have a role when you got Francisco Lindor at shortstop. So getting an outfield prospect in return for Walls made sense. It's not a bad deal for both sides. I just don't know if, like, does Atlanta need to do something more to address the issues that they're going through right now?
Yeah, and I think to your point, this may have been a case where Atlanta is trying to decide where they're at in their season, and they may just not be ready yet to make kind of that next level move that would require the player or prospect capital to do that at this point until they would feel a little bit more comfortable about where their team is at.
Yeah, and they might still be deciding if they're going to be buyers or sellers, because they could fall on either side of that. Because like we mentioned, they were a playoff team last year, so they still have a lot of great pieces. But players like Freddie Freeman aren't getting any younger, so you have to wonder if they reach a point in the season like maybe we need to move someone like Freeman, someone like no, they're probably not going to move Soroka. Who are some other players in their rotation that they could possibly move? Because they have a lot of they have a lot of young pitchers that are almost ready to go. They can move someone like Newcomb, or maybe Connor Thomas, or Ian. Actually, Ian Anderson probably makes more sense than Thomas. Move some of those guys, make way for. They have a plethora of young pitching talent almost ready for the majors. So maybe they start doing that whole, let's trade some of the players that are a little bit on the older side, get ready for the young guys, because like we mentioned earlier, the young stud Antonio Alvarez is hitting the cover off the ball, and maybe they do some retooling. We'll just have to see where they're at the All-Star break and if they decide to buy or sell. Because if they go on a hot streak, they could completely flip around and be like, okay, who are we going to add to this to make the playoff run? Especially in the NL East, which is a very tight division right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There could easily be a chance for them to make a run for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, pulling up my transactions again because I got off that screen. All right, this is I know I said earlier that we didn't really have any blockbusters, but this might be the closest one. And once again, it's our good buddy Cody from the Pirates making this move. He sends Alejandro P.A., one of the top. He's kind of like a utility guy. Like he plays second base, but he can also play the outfield, to Houston for pitcher Frank Glaus, first baseman Eddie Cope. I hope I'm pronouncing these right, and shortstop Ismael Paredes. What do you think of this deal?
This is one of those trades, and when Cody put PA on the block, is one of those that just does make me scratch my head a bit, where it seems like Cody does kind of fall in love and out of love with a lot of his players as young guys as they come up. PA was a guy who he was really, really high on when he first came up. I think, signed him to an extension pretty early on. It was really hyping him, a 7-year deal in June of 2022, which was, I think he was even still in the minor leagues at that point. I don't even think he had made his major league debut yet, it looks like. So those are some of those moves that Cody made early on, which, if they had worked out, great. Then, you have a guy under control at that point. But he obviously fell out of favor a little bit. They had Nasim Nunez at short, and Luis Arias had played a lot of second base. They really made their run to the division title, so it kind of left PA a little bit out in the cold with nowhere to really call home, and he probably wasn't too thrilled with kind of being the super utility guy all over the place.
Who was that middle infielder that they traded for Judge Dozer?
Spitzer, I believe. Dave Spitzer.
Is he injured right now? I don't see him on the roster. I'm trying to. You guys can see how I'm going through. Maybe I'm just completely missing it. I don't see him on the roster right now. I was going to mention that Spencer was.
It looks like he's at AAA. Looks like he's at AAA right now.
I still don't see him. Is he injured?
No, he's well. I don't know if he's injured. He's listed as a left fielder in AAA.
Oh, trying to get more utility out of him. Oh, I see what he's doing.
I guess so,
okay.
Yeah.
Trying to learn a new position. Okay. Well, I was going to mention that they also had traded for Spitzer, which is also another top potential middle infielder. So maybe he's just like, I've got a lot of people that can play the middle infield right now, and that's their best position. I have too many, and I should probably cut ties with the one that's costing me the most money right now, and that would be PA. Now, as you mentioned, he signed him to an extension early on. It's one of those like high risk, high reward things. Like he saw the potential in a player for a team like Pittsburgh, who's got a lower budget. Maybe they were trying to take a chance, saying maybe we can lock this guy up for cheaper than he would be worth once he hits arbitration. And maybe it's one of those things that didn't quite work out. They got to move him. They got a few decent prospects for him. It wasn't a bad return. And you've already got a lot of young guys that can play the middle infield anyway. So I think it makes sense for Pittsburgh and for Houston looking to shore up that middle infield after Altuve left. Although Altuve played a lot of first base for them anyway, not really a second baseman anymore. But especially after the injury to Sammy Isla, they're trying to replace that production. So making a move for PA when you don't have to give up one of your top prospects. It was a bunch of mid-level to maybe slightly high-level prospects. Wasn't too much of a haul to get PA. Maybe PA does some great things in Houston for them. All right, and then our next deal, we have Kansas City and the Dodgers making a deal where the Kansas City sends minor leaguer Jorge Mora and Lou Walker to the Dodgers for Christian Cairo and Steve Miner. A little bit of a two-player swap from both sides. Just looking at this initially, it looks like, just based on the scouting ratings from OSA, that the Dodgers probably got a little bit of a better end of the deal here. But maybe Kansas City was looking for someone that could make a sooner impact on the majors than a 17-year-old pitcher and a 23-year-old that's still in Double-A. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what the logic is behind this. It just seems like a couple of minor league swaps. I don't know. What is there anything, any insight you can give to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same page with you. I mean, Lou Walker is pretty close to the major leagues as a starting pitcher. So, maybe Kansas City was looking to try to get a starting pitcher that was a little bit, a younger pitcher that was a little bit closer to making it to the majors that they liked a little bit better. He's pretty decent prospect there, but otherwise kind of seems like just a little bit of a, I like your stuff, you like mine, let's swap.
Yeah, I don't think any of these prospects are someone that they went to each other like, I have to have this guy. It was more like, hey, you have some pitching prospects, I have some depth, let's see if we can find something that makes sense. We'll see.
Right,
We'll see.
yeah.
This is going to be something we have no idea what's going to happen until maybe a few years down the road, because none of these players are at the major league level yet. So it's just a prospect for prospect deal. We'll see if it makes an impact down the road.
Yeah.
Royals once again making 3 trades here, by the way, that we're going to go back to back to back. They made another trade with Philadelphia, where they swapped Eric Cole to Philadelphia for second baseman Cody Darcy. Eric Cole, 28-year-old outfielder, going to Philadelphia, and then the 26-year-old Cody Darcy coming back to Kansas City. Now, it just looks like Philadelphia was looking to fill a hole in the outfield, and Kansas City wasn't really looking for much in return because they didn't see a role for Cole. Unintentional rhyming. But nothing spectacular, nothing crazy. Maybe Kansas City could have gotten maybe a little bit more of a prospect from Cole, but I don't hate the deal for them. It's like role player outfielder, Philadelphia, get a minor league prospect. Hey, maybe he turns into something.
Yeah, it seems like, again, kind of a, some decent players who, maybe were blocked in their current organization, and just, a change of scenery all around could be helpful.
Yeah. And then the last Kansas City deal, I mean, man, we got a competition for Cody for most trades in a season. Kansas City will send 28-year-old pitcher Carlos Eduardo Hernandez to the Marlins in exchange for 2 catching prospects, Ty Duvall and Mabrys Valoria. Again, I hope I'm saying these right. I have no way of anyone correcting me because there's no way for me to talk to these players. So Marlins looking for a little bit of pitching help. Maybe they think they have a chance to make a run at the NL East, and Kansas City improving their catching prospect depth with maybe a little bit on the older side of prospects, 27 and 28 years old respectively. Maybe they can make an impact at the major league level, as this trade just went through, so we have yet to know where these players are going to be assigned. Maybe one of them, I could see Valoria maybe sticking in the majors for Kansas City. But I don't know. Is this from the Marlins side? I don't know if this is enough of a trade to make a run at anything. But I think you mentioned earlier Bumgarner's having, what was it, a down year or a small injury or something like that?
Small injury, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's just like a fill-in for Bumgarner while he's out. Give up a couple of catchers that you don't necessarily need in your minor league system. A little bit on the older side. If they haven't made an impact at the majors yet, they might not in the future. I don't see this as a horrible trade either side. Just another minor swap here.
Yeah, it looks like the Royals, are putting Ty Duvall in the majors. He's a left-handed bat, so maybe they just wanted a left-handed bat to complement Sam McMillan in their catching rotation, and then Valoria just adds some depth there.
Yep, and that was a whole bunch of trades. Now, keep in mind, this happened over a course of a month's worth of in-game games. So this this these trades ain't over yet, as we're gonna go into some trade rumors that are happening. Some that are rumored from OOTP, and some that we've gotten some inside scoops from GMs across the league. Now, we say that we'd love for GMs to give us like inside scoops like this, but we also have to point out that we are GMs ourselves. So if you don't want myself or JR hearing about trade rumors because it might affect what we do, don't tell us. Because it might affect what we do. I mean, I'm not trying to get information on you guys, but if I hear information, I might want to act on it. Just putting that disclaimer out there. But the first couple things we're going to talk about are ones that were started by OOTP themselves. And the first one, I need to find. Both of them are players that apparently have asked for trades. And I can't find the news. I know who it is. Ryan McMahon of the Colorado Rockies has asked for a trade out of Colorado. What do you think of that one, JR?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. It seems like, because I feel like Lloyd Boston, the Rockies GM, has been trying to move McMahon and some of their other high salaried guys. I think McMahon's been on the waiver wire a couple times, seeing if a team would be willing to pick him up, and that's probably irked him a little bit that he's been dangled out there. So doesn't surprise me too much. That he would want to move. The Rockies, again, we talked about Walker Smith earlier, the season he's had, but the Rockies have also had a big season out of Grant Levine, stepping up and taking over the first base job. So that really kind of put McMahon out of the rotation as well there.
Yeah, again, I'm having a hard time finding a news story, but apparently it was said by the player that he wants out of Colorado. We'll see if that turns into anything. If he's already been on waivers a couple times and no one's bid, and you have to think that he doesn't really have much of value in the trade market. Do you know what's left on his contract? I'm curious now. See if he's a free agent after this year.
Let's see.
He is not. Yeah, this is probably another reason why he's not being traded. He's locked up for another 3 years plus a player option at $11 million a year.
Yeah.
Probably why he's not getting any trade interest, because you got to have a team that's willing to take on that contract for a player who's lost his starting job, and $11 million for a backup infielder. That's kind of steep. Colorado might have to take on some of that contract back if they're going to make a move for him. And then the other one I thought was interesting. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. Apparently, Lucas Sims is wanting out of Cincinnati.
Yeah. Lucas Sims, again, was a guy who had been in our rotation the last couple seasons. I really tried to move him in the offseason. I always felt that he had a lot of talent, and he's a little bit more of a fly ball pitcher, and if he could get to a different ballpark, he could really succeed with the stuff he has, his ability to strike guys out. But again, I think he was owed $11 million this year in the final year of his deal, so nobody was really willing to take on that contract in the offseason. I ended up kind of following the path that Steve Cox did with AJ Puck out in Oakland a couple seasons ago, and thought, well, maybe I'll see if he can pitch well as a late inning, middle relief guy. And he's pitched all right. He had a couple of rough outings here recently, but so I've had him in the bullpen. He's probably not real thrilled about that. Sees himself as a starter. So
well, according to his morale that I've got up on the screen now, some of it's blocked by my camera, but the thing he's most unhappy about is your team's record.
Oh, well, yeah.
He wants to play for a winner. Apparently, he's also unhappy about his role, like you mentioned, but he's very unhappy about the team record. So maybe he just wants to move on to someone where he can start winning some games. I don't know. I mean, it's not like Cincinnati's too far away from turning the corner. Like, you guys are starting to reload with some young guys. So I guess he's just impatient. I mean, at 31, you don't have that many years left.
Right.
So, I know you've kind of had his name around the trade block a few times. No one's, like you mentioned, no one's really bit yet because of that $11 million contract. But maybe now that it's almost halfway through the season, that contract doesn't look too bad anymore, especially when it's expiring. It's a lot more manageable than the McMahon contract.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
absolutely.
We'll see if someone takes a flyer on him, a fly ball pitcher. Sorry, that was bad. Um, to maybe add as an emergency starter or as another bullpen piece. So maybe Baltimore wants him. They've been traded for a bunch of relievers. Maybe they want him.
Yeah. Why
All
not?
right. So now for a couple of rumors that are not necessarily from OOTP. So these are ones I love to talk about because they come straight from the GMs themselves. And this one is an interesting one, like an extremely interesting one. And that is that apparently the Orioles have been seeing, they haven't really made any they're not like committed to this, but they've been seeing about teams making offers for third baseman Buster Bluth. And apparently there's rumors that he's in talks with an NL contender. Now,
Yeah.
Baltimore is not a team that's out of it. They're not a team that's looking to rebuild. They're still in it. But if they can get multiple major league pieces that fill multiple holes for Baltimore, like it's one of those things like you have a star player, but maybe your role players aren't as good as other teams' role players. So maybe sacrifice some of the top level to make the rest of your team better as a whole is coming into a scenario here. Or maybe they're just scoping things out. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the impression I got was that, again, they're not doing this as a means of waving the white flag or saying that they don't think they can contend, but it's more about kind of maximizing their resources and taking a look and saying, hey, if we can take a guy the caliber of Buster Bluth and turn him into 2 or 3, contributing major league players that can fill in other gaps and maybe as a whole, give you a little bit more of a boost, then they're willing to do that. And there's, from what I've been told behind the scenes, there is one, NL contender that's really hot and heavy on his trail, and that there could be a deal sooner rather than later. But again, if other teams know that Buster Bluth is out there and available, Baltimore could get some real serious offers.
Maybe we just open the floodgates there, because this is not something that has been posted in the Discord. This is the stuff I love to talk about. Is the stuff that no one knows about yet. Now I will say, from my perspective as the Cardinals GM, before I added Anthony Rendon, Bluth was someone that I tried to aggressively get, especially with. It was more aggressive with the old GM as opposed to the new GM, because they were someone that was more willing to sell for prospects. But nothing ever materialized for Bluth. But he was definitely someone that I was looking to add as one of the best defensive third basemen in the game. And when you consider how great he is at not striking out and getting on base, his numbers in that area have dipped this year compared to previous years. But he's still someone that has a great eye for the ball, great contact, and has a little bit of pop, and is, like I said, an extremely good defender over there at third base. He has 2 Gold Gloves already in his young career. He's only 25, so definitely someone of value to see if you can get in a trade. Now, obviously, if Baltimore keeps contending, less likely they are to move him, but crazier things have happened in this league, so who knows?
Yeah, that's true.
And then our last rumor that we'll discuss. Well, actually, here I'll throw in my rumor here. Cardinals are definitely looking to upgrade their offense, and that's all I'm going to say. We have explored options to try to improve our offense, because our offense is just hot garbage right now. Oh man, it's been rough. Like I mentioned, we just played a 3-game series against Texas, scored 4 total runs in a 3-game sweep. Earlier, there was a stretch of like 9 games where none of the games scored more than 4 runs. It's been rough for the offense, and the pitching is doing the best it can. Our team has allowed the least number of runs in the NL, and we're still under 500 for the month of May. So, and I think it was May that we were under 500 for. But anyway, that's a slight rumor. No details yet, but I'm definitely searching. If you guys have some hitters that you might want to move to St. Louis, let me know. I know you don't want to. You don't want to send anything to a division rival. Heck,
No, I can't.
I've told you I've wanted Trammell. I've told Cody I'd take Barrios, but that ain't gonna happen because you guys are gonna charge me an arm and a leg for it. But we do have a rumor out of the other Central Division in the AL Central. The Detroit Tigers they have self-claimed that they're falling onto the Cardinals train of losing more than they're winning, which I retort with, you're still not to the point where I was. But they are looking to add a starting pitcher or an outfielder, and they're willing to package specifically. They're looking to move recently re-rated outfielder Tyler O'Neill in a deal, among others. Now, from my perspective, when I first took over as the Cardinals GM, I had Tyler O'Neill on the Cardinals. He was a player that I had Dominic Aguilera for a left fielder. Didn't really have a need for Tyler O'Neill. I moved him for a couple of prospects to Oakland, and he hit a ton of home runs. But he wasn't a player I was looking to have because he was not. He didn't get on base as much as I wanted to. But now that he's got a re-rate on him, let's take a look. I'm gonna put his re-rated attributes on the screen according to OSA, and they look a heck of a lot better. I'm not trying to control the team. They look a little definitely better than he was. He was in the 40s, I believe, before the re-rate, and he's got quite a bit of power. He's still not very good at avoiding strikeouts. He's striking out at how much is he striking out? He's striking out at 34% right now, which is a little bit high, but he does have a pretty good slugging percentage at 472. Now he's not playing very often. He's a bench player, but he is re-rated. He's got good defense. He's got good power.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the Tigers can get what they're looking for if they move O'Neill, or are they going to have to attach someone with a much higher ceiling?
I think they're going to have to. I don't think he can be a centerpiece of a trade for a top starting pitcher or top outfielder. But it sounds like they're looking to really make a splash, from what I've been told. So I think it's going to require somebody else to be a centerpiece. He can be a nice piece of a deal like that, but I think something from their farm system is going to have to be the centerpiece of that. I know they've dangled out there Kendall Williams and Levon Soto and some other players that they're willing to package for a deal, but I think if they really want to make an impact, teams are gonna charge them a premium based on with the kind of talent they have throughout their pipeline.
Yeah, they might have to give up someone like community creative player Chuck Norris, their center fielder over there in Detroit. Or I think Hank Peralta, he's a 1.0er, is that right? No, he's an eMLB on the show player. I knew he was something related to that, but we got Hank Peralta, the left fielder, a couple of their top prospects over there. Probably going to be hard to get pitcher Steve Pickard, their top prospect. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they're going to have to give up more than just Tyler O'Neill if they're asking for a stud starting pitcher. It's going to take more than Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. Well, that is the end of our news. It's taken us a while to get here. So here we go for another long segment, though. We're going to jump right into our power rankings. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we're going to kind of set the slate clean in terms of our biggest movers and droppers and who's new to the rankings. We're just wiping the slate clean. It's been over a month of games since we've last done these power rankings. So they're definitely a mix-up from what they were before. So we'll start down at the bottom with JR at number 10, and we will move our way up. And it is definitely different than... Oops, I just accidentally revealed what your first one was by clicking on the PowerPoint. But go ahead, talk about your number 10 team. My bad.
Yeah, so I've got the Chicago White Sox at number 10. They've played pretty consistently this year, fighting there to stay within striking distance in that AL Central with the Tigers. They've kind of fluctuated a little bit here and there, but they've been pretty consistently in the top 10.
All right, and my number 10, revealed at the correct time. Like I said, this is a new way of us doing the power rankings this time. I'm changing the way we're recording these videos, so bear with me here. I got the Houston Astros at number 10, sitting at third in the AL West. Kind of average play over the past couple weeks. They were in second place. They've dropped just a half game back of LA. I think they're still struggling to find footing after the Sammy Isla injury. Maybe that, and I don't think right now the PA trade is, I think he's hitting like in the 100s right now, so it's not quite what they were hoping for. They're not a bad team. They're still sitting there with 38 wins, but it's difficult to see if they have any positive momentum going forward. But right above them, I have the team that's a half a game above them, and I've got the LA Angels at number 9. Just one fewer loss than the Astros. Kind of a similar streak right now. They're kind of sitting around 500 over the past couple weeks. Nothing spectacular, nothing crazy. But based on a little bit of a strong start, they're still hanging around with the top of the league. But yeah, it's one of those things like we're waiting for them to break out and show us the World Series team that they were last year. So I've got the Angels sitting at number 9.
Yeah, and I've got the Astros just a step up from yours. I have them at number 9. I still, to your point, I do think they're adjusting, to missing out on Isla. I think, they're still getting some strong performances in that rotation from Forrest Whitley and Noah Syndergaard and Aaron Nola, and that's really what I expect to carry them, along with some of those veterans they have in the bullpen, and then they'll just kind of have to see what they can get going on the hitting side. And then for me at number 8, I've got the Washington Nationals. Again, pretty consistent team that they've got there. Juan Soto, again, I think he's starting to pick things up a little bit. He had kind of started off a little bit slow, but I think he's starting to get going. Jose Anthony has just been on fire all season long. He had gotten an extension here earlier, and that looks like it's going to be well deserved for a long time. Mark Diggs has come up and performed really well, so I think they're getting some of that refreshed blood coming in there and really contributing to their offense, especially.
I will say though they are struggling as of late. Though they are currently on a 4-game losing streak. So and they are only. There are 2 teams within 2 games of them for the division, so they need to step it up if they're gonna make things comfortable for them going forward. But my number 8 team is the Chicago White Sox, as you had them at number 10. They're on a little bit of an upswing lately, so that's why I have them a little bit higher. They definitely hit some rough waters, kind of like the same thing with the Cardinals. Within the month of May, but they've recently found their groove. They won 8 out of the last 10, including 6 straight. They are in second behind the Tigers, 5.5 back, but still definitely within striking distance. So I've got the White Sox there at number 8. And not only that, one of the stories of the year is their first baseman, Joey Best. He's currently leading the AL in home runs with 22. Absolutely loving that hitter's park over there in Chicago. Definitely one of the surprises of the season. He's even got more home runs than Pedro Serrano, if you can believe it, who's sitting at 19. But that's definitely a good story going in Chicago. And then number 7 for me, I've got the Milwaukee Brewers, hot on the tails of the St. Louis Cardinals by 1.5 games. They have been playing a lot of great baseball lately to take advantage of the slide that the Cardinals have been in recently. They're still middle of the top 10. They're not one of the top teams in the league right now. They're on a little bit of a downswing, 4 out of their last 10, but they're definitely playing well in terms of the offensive side of the ball. But we mentioned that injury to Walker Buehler. If they can't find some consistency from their starting rotation, they're going to start falling in the standings quickly. But right now, I've got them at number 7. So we'll see if they can maintain that moving forward.
Yeah, and to touch on the Brewers real quick, I do not have them in my top 10 at all, and I know their record, is there, with a lot of teams, but really because of the Buehler injury as much as anything, I just don't see their roster as it's constructed now, being a top 10 team, and I just feel like they're going to fall off. So I do not have them in my top 10 at all.
Well, I'll go ahead and touch on the team that I don't have in my top 10 that you do, and that's the Nationals. I didn't put the Nationals in my top 10 because I just don't. They're not playing well enough to be a top team. Yeah, they're leading their division, but them and the rest of the teams in their division are either right at barely above 500 or barely below 500, and they're not taking advantage of, like, the Phillies. We say that they're doing well, but in reality, they're only 2 games above 500. I feel like the Nationals should be a lot further ahead than they are based on the talent they have on that roster. So they're not playing up to they're not playing like a top 10 team right now. So that's why I don't have them in my top 10. So
Yeah, that's fair.
all right, so you go ahead
So
with number 7.
So at number 7, I do have the LA Angels. I think they've started to turn it around a little bit with the way they kind of address the pitching. We talked about the Aza trade earlier. I think that helps them out a lot from the pitching side, and I think they're starting to get back in a little bit of groove. In that really tough AL West. So I've got them at 7. And then at number 6, I have the St. Louis Cardinals, your St. Louis Cardinals. Who,
how the mighty have fallen. Hey, at least I'm still in the top 10.
Still leading the NL Central. They're still the division leaders despite the offensive struggles lately, which I do think there's plenty of talent there for that to turn around. And again, because of the Walker Buehler injury really damaging Milwaukee, despite the fact that the Cubs have made a little bit of a run to get close and are now over 500, I still think the Cardinals are going to have an opportunity to turn things around and get back pointed the right direction.
Yeah, I hope so, because that's also where I have them. I have them at number 6. I agree with you. I misspoke earlier. I said we had an under 500 record in May. I was wrong. We actually had a strong month of May. We were 19-10. It's June that's been our issue. We are 6-12 in June currently, and that has been our downfall here. And the biggest reason for it is because of our offense. We went from like a top 3 offense in the NL to now we're barely in the top 10 in most offensive categories. The only one we're in the top 5 in now is home runs. We're 3rd in the NL with 96. So yeah, everything else we've kind of fallen out of the top 5, and it's just been like I'm just looking at my schedule here. Let's see, the one time that I think we've scored more than 4 runs twice, and that was an 8-6 loss against San Francisco that lasted 20 innings. And then our 17-7 loss to your Reds. Those are the 2 times that we've scored more than 5 runs. I think I said 4. So I guess we had one game where we scored 5 runs, and again, it was a loss to Cincinnati. So like the few times our offense did well is just the few games where our pitching didn't do well. And it's just like, when can our offense find the consistency that we had in April and May? Because it's been a struggle. If we can't turn this around, heck, at this point with the injury to Walker Buehler and the way the Cardinals offense has been playing, by the All-Star break, the Cubs could be in first place. Like
maybe
that's a key series coming up. The next series between for the Cardinals is a 3-game series against Chicago. If Chicago sweeps that, we've got a whole new division. I'm just saying, like the Cubs actually have a chance to get back in this. But the Cubs are not one of my top 10 teams. Moving on to number 5. When JR and I were planning this, we joked that you must have 40 wins in order to be in the top 5. Because that's literally what our top 5 teams are all the teams that have at least 40 wins. And for me, number 5 are the Tampa Bay Rays, the one team that has 40 wins but is not a division leader. They are definitely playing well, but they are, like I mentioned, they are not in the lead in their AL East. They are just a half a game behind the Boston Red Sox, who are holding them off. 7 out of their last 10, they have won. They're playing really good baseball right now. I'm still wondering what's going to happen when they bring up these prospects that they keep talking about, and if that's going to ruin the momentum they've got right now. But we'll see if those youngsters have a positive or negative impact on the ball club. But I have them here as the number 5 team in the league right now.
Yeah, I have the Rays at number 5 also. It was a really tough call for me between them and the Red Sox, who I have at number 4. So, those two I really kind of had in tandem a little bit there. I gave the Red Sox just a little bit of an advantage there, but I feel like both of those teams have been performing really well. And we also have the Orioles, who didn't make either of our top 10, but still a little bit in contention there for the AL East, and I think that's going to be a fun one to watch go down to the wire. With all the talent in Tampa Bay, and then with Boston, Mookie Betts having a heck of a year. Second baseman James LeBlanc has been incredible with the bat so far, and he always gives you that Gold Glove defense. And Boston has also shown early on that they're willing to make some moves. So I think we could see them be active around the trade deadline, trying to go for it here.
I think the word that would describe Mookie Betts is clutch, because I actually, as I'm saying, I've also got Boston at number 4. But you look at the league leaders, Mookie Betts has 72 RBIs, and it's not even July yet. Like, this dude is driving the runners in when he has the opportunity, and that has been a huge key. And the main reason I have Boston at number 4 ahead of Tampa Bay is more like recency bias. They've won 9 out of their last 10. They're on a 6-game winning streak, and they just look a lot better than the Rays, right? Well, maybe not a lot better, but they look better than the Rays right now. So I have them at number 4. And getting into our top 3, we have, for me, I have the Detroit Tigers at number 3. If we had done this episode when we wanted to last week, the Tigers were my number 1 team. But as we mentioned earlier, they're on a little bit of a slide lately. They've only won 3 out of their last 10. Not as big of a slide as the Cardinals have had recently. Well, actually, you know what? Maybe let me fact check that. Let me make sure I'm not making assumptions, because you know me, I'm a numbers guy. I want to make sure that I'm not putting my foot. No, they're 500 in June. They're fine. I'm 6-12 in June. they're at 500, so they're not near. They're not as bad as the Cardinals fall so far. But Tigers are still they're probably the best, maybe the best offense in the league, and they have top 5 both in pitching and hitting right now. It's hard to put them at number 3, but they have had this slide here in June where they're 10-10. They had, in the middle of that, they had 5-game losing streak where they got swept by the White Sox, and then bookended with losses to the Yankees and the Royals. They actually lost 3 out of 4 against the Royals after that sweep to the White Sox. So recently they are not playing some good baseball right now. So you hope they're looking to turn this thing around. They've got a couple of they still have a long stretch of games where they don't have a day off. Their last day off was June 12th, and they don't get another one until the All-Star break. They're playing a complete month of games in a row, and that's some taxing baseball that they've got to play. So we'll see if we hit some fatigue and they keep on this downswing going into the All-Star break, because that's not an easy stretch of games to play a whole month worth of games without getting a day off. So we'll see how that impacts them. But I have the Tigers at number 3.
Yeah, and I have a number 3. I have the San Diego Padres, which may be a little bit of a surprise, given their record and where they're at, and I can't deny they've been playing really well of late. Fernando Tatis already has 5.8 WAR. Asher Kim already has 4 WAR. I mean, those guys have been really carrying this club. I still am not entirely sold on them as the best team in the National League, although that's essentially what they are right now. But we're getting there. They're definitely impressing me more and more as each week goes by.
I mean, you're questioning them as the best team in the NL. Are you saying that the Cardinals and Nationals are close to them? Because those are the only other 2 NL teams you have on your top 10.
I still think there's, overall, when you look at the talent, St. Louis and San Diego are very close. And if you just looked at the rosters, I would give the edge to St. Louis.
Yeah, but you got to play. That's why they play the games. You can't just look at the.
Yeah, that's why you play the games, and that's why that's why I have San Diego rated higher for right now. But I still think they're also they've been able to enjoy a little bit of an advantage playing in a National League that's a little bit down from the American League, and what some of the other teams have been putting on.
That's probably a good point because, as like I just mentioned, there's only three NL teams on your top 10, and I think only three NL teams on my top 10, and one of them isn't even a division leader. So I guess that's a good point that the Padres are maybe playing a weaker league in NL versus AL, and that's why they're playing so well. So that might be a good point. So you got it number 2 then.
So number 2, I've got the Tigers. Again, I still think that roster is stacked, and even when they go through a little bit of a dry spell, they're still in control of that American League Central and looking like a World Series contender. So I still see them as definitely at the top of the rankings here, right, toward the top of the rankings.
All right, and at my number 2, I've got the Texas Rangers. Got to give them respect. They just, like I've mentioned many times, they just swept my Cardinals in the last 3 games of this sim, only giving up a total of 4 runs, which means they didn't have to score much. They only scored 12 runs. They outscored us 12-4, but they have been on fire lately. They have taken a huge hold of that AL West. They are currently on a 9-game winning streak, and they are not looking like they're going to slow down anytime soon. Has started out the year like in 3rd in the division, and they've just gotten hot, and now they have a 6-game lead over LA in that division, and they might hold on to it. They have a lot of talent on that roster. They have a lot of young players, a lot of speed, very good 1-2 punch in their rotation, and they're not looking to slow down anytime soon. So I've got the Rangers at number 2, but we already mentioned them. I've got San Diego at number 1. They have the best record in baseball right now. They are also on their own 9-game winning streak, and they are looking very, very strong right now. You already mentioned Tatis is having a career year. He's got the Triple Crown. He's leading the league in average, home runs, and RBIs. And if he can manage to nab that Triple Crown, he is going to take away the MVP that Juan Soto has had a stranglehold over for the past couple seasons. He is having an MVP season with batting .369 this late in the season, 24 home runs and 67 RBIs. Like I said, all leading the NL. If he was in the AL, he would only be losing in RBIs to Mookie Betts. And that is very impressive. And he is leading that San Diego Padres team. And I think that they are currently the best team in the league.
Yeah, and I've got the Rangers as my number 1 team. Their pitching staff is awesome, especially their starters. They're really strong. Even losing, all big time closer DeMarcus Evans, their bullpen has pitched pretty well to go along with their starters. They're getting a lot of production out of their infield. They got a really strong infield, and they've had some guys step up in the outfield. Danny Bradford has played really well while they kind of wait for Jose Merriman to really pick it up like he did as a rookie. And I just think they have a real complete roster, and I'm always a guy that's going to err on the side of trusting pitching over anything. So with that pitching staff, they get the top spot from me.
Absolutely. So there you have it. There are top 10 as of late June, specifically June 23rd. And looking forward to the future, we've got the All-Star break coming up in a couple of sims. We've got All-Star voting is open now. Maybe on the next podcast, we'll give, if the rosters haven't been revealed, we'll give our predictions as to who do we think is going to make the All-Star team for each league. We've also got like we mentioned earlier, we've got the first year player draft coming up. We will probably have to plan a draft special podcast for that. That's going to take some preparation, as I don't really have I just send my scout out there, and then once we hit that, I'm like, okay, who's got the best potential? So I'll have to do some research on that to try to learn about some of these prospects, especially some of these community created players. Those are probably going to get most of the spotlight as we do a draft special. But as we start to turn the page toward July. Any other thoughts? Any other comments, Jr. Before we sign off for the night?
I just think it's going to be interesting to see, how some of these races shape up. We got a couple of races that are starting to have some teams pull away, and you got a couple of divisions that are really packed with where any of three and in some cases maybe four teams could win it. So, once we get through the All-Star game, get through the All-Star break, those couple weeks leading up to the trade deadline, teams are going to have to start making decisions. Are we going to add? Are we going to subtract? Are we kind of in the middle, and we're going to stand pat? So it'll be interesting to see what decisions teams make.
And who knows, maybe we'll have a couple of those trades before we even hit the All-Star break. You never know when teams are going to pull that trigger. They might want to say, hey, I want to get in front of this now before teams start jacking up prices by the time the All-Star break comes along. So we might have a couple more. I mean, you've seen it already. Teams aren't afraid to make trades, and there's only a matter of time before a big blockbuster trade comes through. But thank you guys once again for tuning in to the eMLB Insider podcast. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Until next time, take care, guys.